The moment I saw his name on my phone, my heart stopped. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The rain had just started, soft against the window, and I was halfway through my cup of tea when my phone buzzed. Message from Daniel Harper. For a second, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. That name, I hadn't seen it in more than 30 years. My hands trembled as I unlocked the screen. The message was short. Hey, Maggie. It's been a lifetime. I hope you're doing well. I just sat there, staring at the words, like they were written in a language I'd forgotten. Daniel. The same Daniel who once promised we'd stay friends forever. The same Daniel who disappeared from my life without a word. I didn't know whether to smile or cry. After all these years, why now? The rain grew heavier, tapping harder on the glass. I put the phone face down on the table, but my pulse wouldn't calm. I told myself not to reply. I was too old for this. Too old for surprises that reopened old doors. That memories are stubborn things. They don't fade just because you tell them to. I could still picture his face, his wild hair, the way he'd grin when he caught me staring during those long college nights. He'd been my best friend, my anchor. And then one day, he was gone. No goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. Life moved on. I got married, raised 2 kids, buried my husband 5 years ago, and built a quiet rhythm around myself. But that message, 6 small words, broke through everything I'd built to forget him. I opened it again. Read it 3 more times. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I whispered his name out loud. Daniel. The sound of it filled the room. And suddenly, it didn't feel so empty anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept turning over the same questions. Why now? What did he want? I even checked social media, scrolling through profiles that weren't his. He wasn't on any of them. It was like he'd only appeared for me. By morning, I'd convinced myself not to reply. But before I could delete the message, my phone buzzed again. I'm sorry for disappearing. I've thought of you more times than you'd believe. Something in my chest twisted. He remembered. After all these years, he remembered. I typed back before I could stop myself. Hi, Daniel. You found me. His reply came instantly. I never stopped looking. I stared at the screen, my tea gone cold beside me. It felt like time folded in on itself. Like I was 20 again, sitting across from him in that old campus cafe, laughing about everything and nothing. He asked how I'd been. I told him about my garden, my grandkids, the quiet life I'd built. He told me about his kids, his work, his move out west. It was polite, careful, but underneath it, I could feel something trembling. The kind of connection you can't erase, no matter how much time passes. Hours passed without me realizing. By the time we stopped texting, the sky outside had turned pink. Before I put my phone away, I noticed the last thing he'd written. It's strange. I had a dream about you last week. You were standing by the ocean, calling my name. I stared at the words, goosebumps rising along my arms. He couldn't have known. No one could. Because just a few nights earlier, I had dreamed of the ocean, of standing there alone, calling out for someone I couldn't see. And now here he was. I shut my phone and tried to shake the feeling, but it lingered like static in the air. Coincidence, I told myself. Just coincidence. But when I turned off the light, I saw it. An envelope sitting on the edge of my desk. The one I'd found last week while cleaning out an old drawer. Faded handwriting. My name on the front. From Daniel Harper. The same name that had just appeared on my phone. The same name I hadn't spoken in decades. I hadn't opened the letter then. I thought it was just some forgotten note from the past. But now, as the rain whispered outside, I picked it up with shaking hands. The paper was yellowed, the seal still unbroken. My name written in that same slanted handwriting I'd know anywhere. My throat tightened. How long had this letter been waiting here? And why now? Why the message after all these years? I tore the seal open. My heart pounding. Inside was a single page. The ink was faded, but the first line was clear. Maggie, if you ever find this, it means I've finally done what I should have done years ago. I froze. Done what? Before I could read further, my phone buzzed again. His name flashing across the screen. Maggie, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago. The letter trembled in my hand. The words on the page blurred. And then the screen went black. His message disappeared. My heart skipped. I whispered his name again. But this time, it didn't sound like remembering. It sounded like the beginning of something I wasn't ready for. The letter lay open on my lap, its paper soft and thin like old skin. I couldn't stop staring at the first line. If you ever find this, it means I've finally done what I should have done years ago. I wanted to keep reading, but my hands wouldn't move. It was like my body remembered something my mind had tried to forget. Outside, the rain had stopped. The house felt too quiet, too aware. I closed my eyes, and just like that, the years fell away. It was autumn, 1976. The air smelled of coffee and chalk dust. I was 19, sitting under a maple tree behind the library, crying over a broken typewriter ribbon. He'd walked up, holding a half-eaten apple. Are you crying over punctuation or heartbreak? I looked up, startled. Neither. Technology betrayed me. He grinned. Then you and I already have something in common. That was Daniel. Bold, curious, always ready to turn any small disaster into a story worth telling. By the end of that day, we'd spent 3 hours talking. About everything. Books, music, what scared us, what we hoped for. From that afternoon on, we were inseparable. We studied together, ate together, shared secrets in the dark corners of the campus. He had this way of listening, really listening, like every word I said mattered. And when I laughed, he'd look at me as if I was the only bright thing in a noisy world. Sometimes we'd walk to the lake near campus, skipping stones until sunset. He'd always let me win. Once, when I called him out on it, he said, "It's not losing if I get to see you smile." It was simple, easy, beautiful in the way only young friendship can be. Everyone thought we'd end up together. Maybe I did too. But we never said it. We just existed in that unspoken space, where friendship and love hold hands, but pretend not to notice. Until that winter. He'd been accepted into an art program, overseas, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He told me over coffee, his hands shaking slightly. I leave in January, he said quietly. For a year. I forced a smile. That's amazing, Daniel. It's just, I didn't think it would happen so fast. I nodded, but something in me cracked. A year felt like forever back then. For weeks, I avoided him. I told myself I was being practical. That space would make it easier to say goodbye. But he didn't understand. The night before he left, he showed up at my door, snow on his coat, frustration in his eyes. Maggie, why are you shutting me out? I'm not. I lied. Yes, you are. Did I do something wrong? No. Daniel, you're just leaving. He sighed, staring at the ground. I thought you'd be happy for me. I am, I said. The words caught in my throat. He waited. I didn't say them. And then he turned and walked away. That was the last time I saw him. He sent letters, a few at first. Then fewer. Then none. By the time I realized what I'd lost, it was too late. Life had moved forward. Marriage. Kids. Responsibility. The kind of busy that leaves no room for wondering what if. I opened my eyes, back in the present. The light outside had dimmed. The air was still. The letter in my lap was waiting. I took a deep breath and began to read. Maggie, I owe you an explanation. You deserved 1 year ago. I never meant to disappear. I tried to write, I did. But something happened. My pulse quickened as I traced the faded ink. The program was supposed to be a year. Then 2. Then I got an offer to stay. I wanted to tell you, but your last letter never came. I thought you'd moved on. When I finally came back, you were gone. I frowned. My last letter? I never sent one. But then I remembered the letter I wrote after his first month away. The one I'd sealed, stamped, and tucked into my coat pocket. The coat I'd lost that same week. My chest tightened. He'd waited for a letter that never came. And I'd mistaken his silence for indifference. 2 lives, 2 hearts, derailed by a single missing envelope. I kept reading. I looked for you, Maggie. I went back to campus. I even called your old address. But no one knew where you'd gone. It felt like you'd vanished. Maybe we weren't meant to find each other then. Maybe it's better this way, years later, when we finally understand what we had. I wiped at my eyes. The ink blurred under my tears. Then I noticed something at the bottom of the page. A second, smaller note, in a different color of ink. Newer. If you ever read this, it means I finally did it. I sent that message. The one I should have sent 30 years ago. And if fate's kind, maybe you'll still be there to read it. I froze. The message. He must have found the old letter recently, the one that had never reached me, and sent his first text, the same day. He hadn't just written out of nostalgia. He'd written because he found the past. Somewhere, after decades, our story had looped back to where it was meant to start again. I stared at his handwriting. My heart beat steady now. Not from shock, but from something gentler. He hadn't forgotten. He'd been waiting for me to remember Dot. And maybe, after all this time, fate had finally delivered the letter that got lost. When I opened the door, I almost forgot how to breathe. Daniel, older. Of course. Silver hair, gentle lines across his face, but the same steady eyes, the same familiar warmth that once anchored me through everything. Hi, Maggie, he said, voice soft but sure. For a moment, all I could do was stare. The years between us vanished like dust. I stepped aside. Come in. He smiled. That same smile that once made everything feel possible, and walked through the doorway, as if he'd never left. The air inside felt charged, full of unsaid things. He glanced around the living room, taking in the photos, the plants, the small signs of the life I built without him. This place suits you, he said. It feels like you. I smiled faintly. It's quieter than I used to be. We both laughed, lightly, politely, like 2 people trying to remember how laughter used to sound when it was easy. He placed his coat on the chair and turned toward me. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. I wasn't sure either, I said honestly. His gaze softened. But you opened the door. Yes, I whispered. I did. We sat on the porch, 2 mugs of tea between us, watching the light fade over the trees. The silence wasn't awkward. It was thick with memory. Every pause carrying 1,000 things neither of us dared to say. Finally, I asked, "How did you find me?" He smiled. You'd be surprised what a stubborn old man can do with a phone and a memory. We both laughed again, easier this time. Then he said quietly, I found the letter. I looked at him, my heart catching. The one I never got. He nodded. It was in an old box with my travel papers. I must have tucked it there before I left. When I read it, Maggie, it felt like no time had passed. Like I could still hear your voice. I swallowed. You waited for a letter that never came. And I thought you'd stopped caring. He sighed, looking out at the yard. We both thought the other had moved on. I guess that's what silence does. The wind brushed through the leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out. That late summer sound that always feels a little like goodbye. I kept thinking about what I'd say if I ever saw you again, he said. Now that I'm here, all I can manage is... Sorry. For what? For leaving without telling you how much you mattered. The words landed softly but hit deep. My eyes stung and I looked away before he could see. I was angry at you, I admitted. For years. I thought you chose the world over me. He smiled sadly. I did. And it wasn't worth it. We talked for hours about our kids, our losses, the small triumphs and quiet days that filled the space between then and now. There were moments when I caught him watching me, his eyes full of something I couldn't name anymore, or maybe didn't dare to. When the sky darkened, I brought out an old photo album. He chuckled as he flipped through it. You kept these. I keep too much, I said. He paused at a picture of us, laughing, wind in our hair, carefree. We were something, weren't we? He murmured. I nodded. Yes, we were. He set the album down and looked straight at me. Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we hadn't lost touch? The question hung in the air like a spark waiting to catch. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. Part of me wanted to say every day. But the other part, the older, steadier part, just smiled softly. Maybe we were meant to meet again now, not then. He studied me, as if weighing that answer. Maybe. The porch light flickered on automatically. The glow framed his face in gold, and I realized how much time had passed. How much living we'd both done in separate worlds. He stood slowly. I should go before it gets dark. I rose too. You can stay for dinner. He hesitated, searching my face. Do you want me to? That question. Simple, but heavy with everything we'd never said. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught again, just like all those years ago. He smiled gently, like he already knew. I'll call tomorrow, he said. If you'll let me. I nodded. I'll be here. He reached out, just for a moment, and brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. It was the lightest touch, but it felt like a lifetime passing between us. Then he stepped back, hands in his pockets, the same quiet grace I'd always loved. At the end of the walkway, he turned. Funny thing, he called out. The first thing I saw when I pulled up was that old maple tree in your yard. Do you remember the one behind the library? The one we used to sit under? I laughed softly. Of course. He nodded. It's the same kind. Thought you'd like that. I watched him drive away until the red of his taillights disappeared down the road. When I turned back toward the porch, something caught my eye, a small folded paper under his empty teacup. I picked it up and opened it. Inside were just 6 words, written in the same careful handwriting as before. Don't let this end twice, Maggie. The next morning, the sky was grey, the kind of grey that feels like it's waiting for something to happen. I sat on the porch, the note still in my hand. Don't let this end twice. I'd read it 12 times, each word heavier than the last. And then my phone rang. His name lit up the screen. Daniel. I answered before the second ring. Morning, he said. His voice was steady, but I could hear something underneath. A tremor, maybe. Morning, I replied. You left something behind. He laughed softly. I was hoping you'd find it. We talked about nothing for a few minutes. Weather, errands, the kind of easy talk that fills space but doesn't settle anything. Then he went quiet. Maggie, he said finally. There's something I need to tell you before we meet again. My heart slowed. Okay, it's about why I stopped writing all those years ago. The real reason. I didn't speak. I just listened. He exhaled. When I came back from overseas, I didn't go straight home. I stopped by our campus first. I wanted to see you to explain. But when I got there, your roommate told me you'd left for good. She said you were engaged. I froze. Engaged? He nodded on the other end. Yes, to someone named Paul. My throat tightened. But that wasn't true. Paul was just a friend. He helped me move after graduation. We were never... I know, Daniel interrupted gently. I found that out years later. But at the time, I believed her. I closed my eyes. The pieces started falling into place. The silence, the vanished letters, the decades lost to a lie neither of us knew existed. She told me you'd met someone and moved away, he said quietly. She said you didn't want me to reach out. I didn't question it. I thought I was respecting your happiness. I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to breathe through the ache. Daniel, why didn't you ask me? Why didn't you check? I tried, he said. But your address had changed. Your number too. And the world was slower then. No emails, no internet. I sent one last letter to your old home, but it came back unopened. He paused. The silence on the line felt long, like the years themselves were speaking. I thought you were gone, he whispered. So I let you be. I stood and walked to the window, watching the maple tree sway in the wind. You weren't wrong to believe her, I said softly. Back then, it was easier to believe what hurt less. He didn't respond, but I could hear his breath, quiet, steady, human. Why tell me now? I asked. Because I can't stop thinking about what we lost. And because when I saw you again, I realized I never really moved on. I just got older. The words sank deep. I turned from the window, tears threatening but not falling. Daniel, we can't undo what happened. I know, he said, but I don't want to pretend it didn't matter. We both went quiet again. The kind of silence that isn't empty, just full of everything too fragile to say out loud. Finally, I spoke. That woman, my old roommate, she passed away years ago. I'll never know why she told you that. Maybe she thought she was protecting you, he said. Or maybe she was just wrong, I replied. We both laughed softly. A tired, gentle sound. Then he said, when I found that old letter last month, it was like a door opening after being locked for a lifetime. I wanted to see what was still behind it. And what did you find? I asked quietly. He hesitated. You, exactly as I remembered. I closed my eyes. The words felt too real, too close. I'm not the same, Daniel. He smiled through the line. Neither am I, but maybe that's what makes it right this time. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Then the sound of thunder rolled far off in the distance, low, steady, reminding us of time. Come by tomorrow, I said finally. I'll make tea. There was relief in his breath. I'd like that. But before I could end the call, he added softly, Maggie, there's one more thing. Something in his tone changed. Lower, heavier. What is it? He didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, when I said I'd found the letter, that wasn't the whole story. I didn't just find it. Someone gave it to me. My hand tightened around the phone. Who? Your daughter, he said quietly. She's the one who found it in a box marked keep. She told me you've never opened it. I froze. My daughter? Yes, Emma. I sat down, stunned. She contacted you. He exhaled. She said you'd been cleaning out your old things, that you weren't sleeping well, that you kept talking about unfinished stories. My mind raced. I never told her about you. I know. She told me that too. But she said she could tell. That you still thought about someone. I pressed a hand to my lips. My daughter, reaching into the past I'd buried, bringing him back. Why would she do that? I whispered. Daniel's voice softened. Maybe she just wanted to see you happy again. I couldn't speak. The tears came silently this time, warm and certain. Tomorrow then, he said, his voice breaking a little. Tomorrow, I managed. When the call ended, I sat there, the world spinning quietly around me. My daughter. The letter, the lie, the man I'd never truly stopped loving. And the truth, the real truth, finally standing where silence used to be. Outside, the wind picked up, scattering the first yellow leaves across the porch. I looked at the phone in my hand. Tomorrow was coming. And with it, the choice I had avoided for 30 years. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, watching the porch light flicker against the wind. Every sound felt alive. The creak of the floorboards, the soft rustle of the maple leaves, the faint ticking of the clock that had belonged to my late husband. Morning came like a sigh. I made tea, brushed my hair, and laid 2 cups on the table. One for me, one for him. Just like I used to imagine back when I was 20 and certain of everything. At 11 sharp, Daniel's car pulled up. He stepped out slower than before, cane in hand, but his smile was the same. Time hadn't stolen that. Morning, he said. Morning, I replied, like we'd done this every day of our lives. We sat on the porch in quiet ease. No need to fill the air. The silence finally felt like a friend, not an enemy. After a while, I said, You met my daughter. He nodded. She reminds me of you. I smiled. She has my stubbornness. And your kindness, he added softly. For a moment I looked at him, really looked. The man I'd once loved so fiercely that losing him had rewritten my life. And now here he was, not as a ghost of the past, but as a living piece of it. How did she find you? I asked. He took a breath. She was at the library one afternoon, reading old town archives. She found my name in a veterans article and reached out. Said her mother once knew me. Said there was a letter with my name on it. I laughed quietly. She's always been curious, she said. He continued. You used to tell stories about a boy who taught you to dance in the rain. My heart softened. You remember that day? He smiled. How could I forget? You ruined your shoes. I thought you'd be furious. I was, I said, laughing. But I loved every second of it. He looked down at his hands. Older, worn, still steady. I thought I'd never get the chance to say I'm sorry, he said. For believing a lie. For letting it be the end of us. I reached over and touched his hand. We were young, alive. It happened fast. He nodded. But I never stopped thinking about you, Maggie. Even when I tried to. My throat tightened. I'd spent years pretending love could fade with time. But seeing him there, I knew it only softened, waiting for the right moment to breathe again. We sat like that for a long time. No grand speeches, no tears, just truth, quiet and clean. Then he said, I have something for you. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small folded paper. Yellowed at the edges. It was the letter, the one I'd never opened. He handed it to me, his fingers trembling slightly. I think it's time you read it, he said. I hesitated, then opened it carefully. The ink had faded, but the words still shone. If you ever read this, it means I finally had the courage to say what I should have said long ago. I loved you. Not the way boys love, but the way hearts do when they find home. If we don't find our way back to each other, I hope you'll still dance in the rain sometimes, just so I'll know you're happy. My eyes blurred. I folded it back, holding it to my chest. You never stopped meaning it, did you? I whispered. He shook his head. Not for a single day. I wanted to tell him everything. About the years, the losses, the small joys that never felt full without him. But instead, I just smiled through the ache. Daniel, I said softly, we can't get the years back, but maybe we can still have the moments. He looked at me, eyes glistening. That's all I ever wanted. The wind picked up again, brushing through the trees. I reached for his hand, and he took it, gently, like he was afraid I'd disappear. We sat like that as the afternoon light turned gold. At one point, Emma came home, stood by the doorway, and smiled. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. When Daniel finally rose to leave, I walked him to his car. He paused before getting in and looked at me. Maybe one day, if the rain comes again. He began. I'll dance, I finished for him. He smiled. Then I'll be somewhere nearby, humming our tune. I watched him drive away, slow and steady, until the road curved and he disappeared behind the trees. That night, I sat by the window again. The letter lay beside me, the ink soft against the lamplight. I took out a pen and wrote on the back of it. You kept your promise. I did 2. Then I folded it and placed it inside a small wooden box marked Keep. Just before bed. The rain began. Soft, steady, cleansing. I walked out to the porch barefoot, let it fall on my skin, and laughed quietly through the tears. Some loves don't end. They just wait, for courage, for time, for peace. And sometimes, when the rain finally comes, they find their way home.